Hansi Flick's start at Barcelona has been electrifying, scoring over 55 goals. But it's not just the attack that's making waves, it's the defense that's redefining their game. Flick's defensive blueprint is daring, precise, and relentless, creating a system that turns defense into an art of suffocation. But what makes this high line so effective? Why are top teams struggling to crack it? If there's one thing Barca fans had to sit through too often, it was watching the team dominate up front but look shaky at the back. It's like the team had this split personality. One side could destroy you with beautiful passes, and another couldn't hold it together defensively. And trust me, Xavi knew it too. In his own words, "Going forward, we created a lot, but bad errors at the back mean we're behind Madrid and Girona. A point is not enough." Every Barca fan knew the story. We'd watch them string together 20, 30 passes, get right up to the opposition's goal, look like they could score any second, and then bang! A single mistake, a counter-attack, and suddenly we're picking the ball out of our net. And it wasn't just once or twice. This was happening game after game, especially in those big moments against teams like Real Madrid and even Girona. Xavi was under so much pressure, and he even admitted the frustration when he said, "The goal is not to throw in the towel. We're not giving up the league, but we know it's difficult." The mistakes were causing a drop-off on the league. Players like Koundé, Araujo, and Christensen were left scrambling, trying to cover for each other and make up for lapses. Koundé, who was fantastic, was constantly being dragged out of position because the whole backline was stretched. And Balde, great going forward, but young and still developing defensively, often found himself caught up the field with too much ground to cover. The balance was just off, and it felt like no matter who Xavi rotated in, nothing stuck. The fans were frustrated, Xavi was frustrated, and it was pretty obvious that Barca needed someone to come in and solidify things. They needed a coach who could pull that defense together and bring out a more organized, compact system, and Hansi Flick brought just that. Hansi Flick has been known from his days at Bayern for having a very good defensive line, has once again brought that same style to Barcelona. Hansi has a reputation for building discipline and having a no-nonsense defense, and that's exactly what Barcelona needed. He did not come in to reinvent the wheel, but he did some serious groundwork to make sure that Barca's defense was solid. One of the first things he did was simplify everything at the back. Under Xavi, players were darting all over the place, sometimes trying to press too high or cover gaps too big. Flick saw this and was like, "No, we're not doing that." Instead, he brought in this structured, compact system where every player had a clear role. No more scrambling, no more chasing shadows, just good old-fashioned disciplined defending. He has stuck to 4 main defensive players this season, with him focusing more on their strength so they excel. But one who is a big key to their puzzle is Inigo Martinez. I mean, a player that most fans had written off has turned the season around. Inigo has this solid, no-nonsense approach which has been so important for grounding the defense. He's not one for flashy moves, but he's always in the right place at the right time, cutting out crosses and handling those physical duels with ease. Inigo's experience also means he's great at organizing the defense. He's constantly communicating, directing his teammates, and helping everyone stay in sync, which is essential in Flick's structured system. And while Pau or Balde might be quick to jump into attack or transition, Inigo's always there as the last line of calm, providing backup if things break down. With his positioning, he can anticipate plays and let the team push up with more confidence. He's not just defending, he's allowing Barca to play higher up the pitch, because they know Inigo's got the discipline and experience to cover them if things get tricky at the back. So he's like the anchor, quietly effective, reliable, and adding that extra layer of assurance to Flick's defensive setup. Pau Cubarsi has also been a surprising asset not just in defense but in building up play. At his age, to be playing at this level is just wild. Flick's seen the potential in him and he's grooming him to be one of Barca's defensive stars. Pau's positioning is surprisingly sharp for someone so young, and he's got this calmness on the ball that you don't usually see in players his age. Then there is Koundé, who's slotted in at right back under Flick with a specific role in mind. Now, Koundé's not exactly new to the right-back spot, and Flick knows he can handle it. What makes it work is how Flick uses Koundé's skills for defensive stability. Koundé stays back more, while Balde is given more freedom to push forward on the left. With Koundé's incredible ability to read the game and manage the high line, Flick can trust him to hold the back line when Barca's pressing upfield. Koundé's positioning and timing have been crucial to catching opposition attacks before they even get dangerous, letting him anchor that right side while Balde does his thing on the left. Flick has also turned Balde into one of the best fullbacks in the league. With his pairing with Rafinha on the left side, they've turned into something different. He's fast, he's daring, and Flick is letting him go for it. Balde is like this live wire on the left, pushing forward whenever there's an opening. Flick has designed it so Balde can make those overlapping runs and contribute to the attack, while Koundé stays deeper, ready to cover if possession is lost. Balde's pace and energy give Barça that added offensive threat from the left, which keeps opponents constantly on edge. These four players have brought another level of defense to the club, but how exactly is Hansi Flick making them work? But before we go into that, can you please subscribe to the channel, as we've got a goal of hitting 15,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and it would really help us out. Thank you. Flick's approach might look like Barcelona's leaving themselves open to fast breaks and counterattacks, but every step of the system is practiced to near perfection. When you get into the details, you start to see how genius and gutsy this strategy is. First off, Barcelona's high line doesn't happen in isolation. It's connected to the way the team presses. The press is intense, and it starts high up the field, with players like Lamine Yamal, Rafinha and Lewandowski swarming as soon as the opposition tries to play out. They're not just pressing to steal the ball, they're pressing to force teams into panicking and hitting long balls, which Barcelona wants. This is where Flick's trap comes into play. They set up a situation where the opposition is encouraged to go for risky, long passes, thinking they can catch Barca's backline off guard. But as soon as that long ball goes up, Barcelona's defenders are in position, ready to intercept, trap, or at least limit the opposition's options. The key here is that Barcelona's high line isn't just players standing upfield. It's a shifting wall where every player knows their exact role. Let's say a team like Real Madrid or Bayern tries to slip a fast long ball through to someone speedy. Vinicius Jr., Mbappe, or any other quick forward. The defenders, especially Koundé, Inigo Martinez, and Balde, are already anticipating it. They're not ball watching, they're reading the opponent's movement, positioning themselves to intercept, and funneling the play back toward areas where Barcelona has more players ready to regain control. Flick has also drilled a zonal marking system into this backline, which makes it all the more effective. Zonal marking means defenders aren't just glued to a single player. Instead, they're guarding areas on the field, which allows them to react as a unit. This is especially powerful when the other team is countering. The defenders hold their zones, so even if one or two players get beat on the initial move, the structure holds, and there's a second line ready to stop the break. It's a much smarter and more sustainable way to defend, especially with a high line, because it's about defending space as much as marking players. And then there's the offside trap. This is probably the most calculated part of Barcelona's high line, and one of the things that's been so frustrating for teams to deal with. Essentially, the backline shifts forward together, and because they're in sync, they're able to catch the attackers offside at just the right moment. It's almost like a dance. Koundé, Inigo, and the others are all watching each other, keeping one eye on the opponent and one on the line, ready to make that tiny, perfectly timed step up that pushes the attackers into an offside position. Real Madrid fell victim to this several times in El Clasico, where they tried to feed the ball to Mbappe only for him to be caught offside because of one last sneaky step up from Barcelona's backline. And this isn't luck, this is drilled. It's Flick's method to give the illusion of space while snatching it away at the last second. And when the high line does get beaten, Barcelona has one more layer of defense in Iñaki Peña, who's transformed into a sweeper keeper. He's not just staying on his line, he's ready to bolt out, closing down space immediately. It's such a crucial role because the high line works best when the goalkeeper is actively involved in sweeping up any through balls or long passes that slip past the defenders. Iñaki's instincts and speed have made this possible, and it's something Barcelona has missed in recent years. Ter Stegen was more of a traditional keeper, but Peña's willingness to take on this added responsibility has allowed Barca to fully commit to this high-risk, high-reward style. Now, one of the big critiques you'll hear from analysts is that the high line leaves too much space behind Barcelona's defense. And sure, in theory, it looks like a big risk, right? You see Barcelona's defenders far up the pitch, and opponents should have all this room to exploit on the counter. But that's where Flick's genius comes into play. This space is an illusion. Because of the positioning of players like Inigo Martinez and Koundé, the space is much narrower than it appears. They're not running backward or giving up ground easily. Instead, they're using their bodies and positioning to close down angles. Inigo, in particular, has been a master of this, knowing when to hold his ground and when to push up to challenge the attacker. This forces opponents to take awkward shots or make difficult passes rather than getting a clear path to goal. One thing that's impressive is how Barcelona's entire line shifts together. You'll see everyone moving up or dropping back in sync, almost like they're connected by an invisible thread. And when the opponent is forced to move the ball backward, that's when Barca cranks up the press again. The forwards push up, the midfielders close down, and suddenly the opponent has nowhere to go but long, which is exactly what Barcelona wants. They're playing a mind game, making the opposition believe they have options only to trap them the second they take them. And let's talk about how coordinated this is with the forwards. You've got players like Lamine Yamal and Rafinha who don't just play offensively. They're pressuring the opponent's defense constantly, pushing them into uncomfortable passes. Flick has turned this team into a well-oiled machine, and this high line isn't just about defense, it's about keeping constant pressure on the opposition, controlling the tempo, and making the entire field feel smaller for the other team. By pushing up so high, Barcelona is compressing the opponent's half and forcing them to play under pressure. They're creating a claustrophobic experience where every pass, every decision has to be made quickly, with little room for error. And what is more surprising is that these are not Barcelona's main centre-backs. Their main centre-backs are out injured. I mean, when Araujo comes back in, things might change because he has the tactical awareness to play in that back like Inigo, but with speed in case a faster player succeeds in passing the backline. Another player that Hansi Flick would love would be Christensen, who's not that fast, but with his experience in the Premier League, would be able to play a high line. But what stands out for Christensen is his ability to play out of the back with perfect execution. When Araujo and Christensen come back, Flick would have a huge headache deciding who plays. Inigo's smart and is the only left-footed defender. Cubarsi is young but plays like an inexperienced player, and he also has a midfielder's passing attribute. Araujo is also good with the ball and has a lot of speed, while Christensen is good with the ball. Flick might end with Araujo and Cubarsi centre-back pairing, and sometimes Araujo in the right-back position, maybe facing players like Vinicius Jr. But what do you think? Who should he go with? Let me know in the comments, and you can watch our video on how good Lamine Yamal is.